Individuals involved in criminal activities will often resort to extreme measures to mitigate their sentences or, ideally, escape accountability altogether. Occasionally, their tactics are so disturbing and repugnant that they shock even the most hardened within the criminal underworld. This narrative recounts the apprehension of a true chameleon, a master of deception and improvisation. Veronica Panarella, a young Italian woman, endured numerous hardships throughout her life. At the tender age of 16, while socializing in a bar, she encountered David Stival, a man who immediately captivated her. Despite a 4-year age gap, they connected instantly, and on their first encounter, Veronica candidly shared her life story with him. They embarked on a relationship, notwithstanding Veronica's status as a schoolgirl. A mere 3 months into their courtship, Veronica expressed her desire to start a family with David. Convinced she wanted a child, he agreed. They moved in together, and shortly thereafter, Veronica discovered she was pregnant. In 2006, their son, Loris, was born. At this juncture, Veronica was only 17 and David 21. Concurrent with these events, Veronica experienced a tumultuous period with her parents. Engaged in constant conflict with her family, she readily left home, and the birth of a child out of wedlock provided further fuel for their disapproval. However, defying her family's expectations, Veronica managed to establish a semblance of family life, and despite her youth, things appeared to progress smoothly. Tragically, fate had a cruel twist in store for them, but until that point, Veronica strived to provide her child with all his needs. Eventually, the couple formalized their union. Veronica became pregnant again and gave birth to a second son, Diego. In reality, Veronica still relied partially on her parents' support. While her husband worked, his income was insufficient to sustain a family of 4. Both families provided considerable assistance, primarily financial. Veronica, for her part, chose not to seek employment, dedicating herself entirely to childcare and domestic duties. Her husband considered her a good wife. She was frugal, maintained a tidy home, and was a loving mother. The children grew, sharing a close bond with their mother. Veronica devoted all her free time to them, though their interactions sometimes resembled that of young friends. This dynamic likely stemmed from Veronica's young age when she became a mother. Many observed that she still exhibited rebellious tendencies. This fueled further conflict with her parents, who believed she couldn't be a proper mother if she treated parenthood like a game. Any attempts to reason with Veronica resulted in hysterical outbursts. The young family resided in the close-knit rural community of Santa Croce Camarina in Sicily, southern Italy, with a population of just 10,000. Despite the quaint small-town atmosphere, early motherhood was considered unconventional. No one anticipated that this impulsive, youthful decision could culminate in the horrific tragedy that will unfold in this narrative. Around 1 p.m. on November 29, 2014, Veronica Panarella presented herself at the local police station, reporting the disappearance of her 8-year-old son, Loris. She explained that she had accompanied him to school that morning, as was her routine. She claimed to have dropped Loris off directly at the school entrance, where he joined the other children. She then took her younger son to kindergarten. Loris was expected to remain at school until 12:30 p.m. When Veronica returned to collect him, he was nowhere to be found. Alarmed and unable to locate him, she immediately reported his disappearance to the police. The police promptly visited the school, but neither the teachers nor staff had seen Loris that day. Fellow students also confirmed they hadn't encountered him near the school or in class. They speculated that he might have skipped school. Some theorized that he had been abducted. However, no one believed Loris would willingly enter a stranger's vehicle. He was considered too intelligent for that. The question arose as to how he could have ended up on the streets if his mother had escorted him to school and seen him enter. At the time, David Stival, Loris's father, was working as a driver in Rome. By this time, David was 29 and Veronica 25. The Carabinieri immediately contacted David, who was surprised by the police report. It transpired that Veronica hadn't even informed him of the situation. He immediately called his wife, who confirmed Loris's disappearance. David promptly boarded a plane to return home. Upon his arrival, he was met with a social media post displaying a picture of his wife and son, announcing the discovery of Loris's lifeless body. The boy's remains were located a mere 4 hours after the initial police report, discarded in a ravine near an old mill, just minutes from the family home. An elderly hunter stumbled upon the body during his routine foray through the woods. Noticing something unusual in the mud, he approached and realized it was the body of a child. He immediately alerted the authorities. At the scene, investigators discovered the mutilated body of young Loris, contorted unnaturally in the ditch, his pants partially lowered, and his underwear missing. Police immediately suspected a sexually motivated crime, believing they were dealing with a child predator who not only assaulted but also murdered his victims, making him doubly dangerous. News of the tragedy gripped the local community with panic. Residents lived in fear, knowing that any child could become the next target of this predator on the loose. News of the murder quickly spread throughout Italy, dominating national headlines and becoming one of the most significant news stories of 2014, stirring public outrage. The public demanded the swift apprehension and prosecution of the perpetrator. Detectives worked tirelessly to find a monster responsible and restore a sense of security to the community. Investigators immediately noted several peculiarities about the crime. It deviated significantly from the typical modus operandi of rapists and other sexual offenders. The most perplexing aspect of the case wasn't the missing underwear, but the fact that after removing it, the perpetrator redressed the boy's pants. While it's not unheard of for offenders in such crimes to keep personal items as trophies, it's highly unusual for them to replace clothing after taking a souvenir. Adding to the mystery, similar incidents were unheard of in the area. Naturally, the police turned their attention to the victim's family. Veronica and Loris Stival were known as a respectable, affectionate young couple. Despite Veronica's young age when Loris was born, she was now a mature woman and appeared to be a devoted mother. In any case, families often hold crucial pieces of the puzzle in such tragedies, so investigators naturally sought to interview Loris's parents. During these interviews, police discovered Davida, a truck driver, spent a significant amount of time away from home, sometimes being present for as little as 50 days out of a month. Consequently, Loris spent most of his time with Veronica. This meant the young mother was frequently alone, coping with the demands of childcare and household management without her husband's support. She often voiced the challenges she faced in this situation. Veronica's isolation fueled rumors of infidelity, though these allegations remained unsubstantiated. When police visited the Stival home, they found Veronica utterly devastated, as Davida had described. She was inconsolable, refusing food, and her grief-stricken state led to severe emaciation, requiring hospitalization and intravenous feeding to prevent starvation. Officers witnessed Veronica's fragile condition firsthand. The emotional toll was evident in her physical appearance, dark circles under her eyes, and a sickly pallor. During this time, Loris's younger brother, Diego, was still living with the family, but was subsequently sent to stay with his grandparents due to Veronica's unstable mental state. Her neglect extended beyond herself to her surviving child. Davida, supporting his wife through this ordeal, had to resign from his job. Despite the family's immense grief, investigators took both parents to the site of Loris's discovery, documenting their reactions on video. They hoped this experience might reveal valuable insights. The footage depicted a shattered Veronica, a mere shadow of her former self, bearing the weight of her son's loss. Among the initial suspects was Horatio Fedona, the elderly hunter who discovered Loris's body. His discovery, a mere 4 hours after the boy was reported missing, raised suspicions. While this could have been coincidental, detectives felt compelled to understand how he located the body so quickly. A thorough investigation, including a polygraph test, confirmed alibi, and absence of Fedona's DNA or fingerprints on the body, yielded no connection to the crime. Despite the lack of evidence, The scrutiny surrounding Fedona led to local gossip linking Veronica romantically with both him and his grandson. Eventually, rigorous investigations cleared Horatio of all suspicion, confirming his discovery of Loris was entirely accidental, a tragic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. With the investigation stalled and no clear leads, reinforcements from the Carabinieri in Rome were called in. After reviewing the case, they focused on Veronica, highlighting the strained relationship between her and her relatives. The grandparents revealed Loris had mentioned a peculiar experiment at school involving plastic cable ties his mother had supposedly purchased. This conversation occurred just a day before his disappearance. The detectives found this detail unsettling. Cable ties were dangerous items, certainly not permitted for school activities. Upon questioning, teachers confirmed no such experiment was planned, nor were cable ties required. Initially dismissed as a child's fabrication, the forensic report brought the cable ties back into sharp focus. The autopsy placed Loris's time of death between 9 and 10 a.m. on the day he disappeared. The cause, strangulation with a thin, cord-like object. Cable ties seem a likely culprit. Investigators now saw a potential link between the grandparents' account and the forensic findings. The medical examiner concluded the murder likely occurred near where the body was found, as injuries sustained from the fall were post-mortem or occurred shortly before death, suggesting Loris was either thrown while still alive or died immediately after being thrown. Detectives theorized Loris might have indeed needed the cable ties for an unknown purpose, inventing the school story as a cover. He may have carried them in his backpack. However, how could the perpetrator know this? It seemed improbable the attacker would randomly search Loris's backpack for a weapon. The Carabinieri believed finding the missing blue backpack held the key to unlocking the mystery. Landfills receiving waste from Santa Croce Camarina were sealed off, and a painstaking search ensued, lasting several days. Yet, Loris's blue backpack remained elusive, adding another layer of complexity. Despite the missing underwear and lowered pants, there was no evidence of sexual assault or foreign DNA. This prompted a shift in the investigation's direction. The initial theory of a sexually motivated crime began to crumble. The perpetrator's profile was now less clear, appearing to deviate from typical patterns of sexual predators. Building a psychological profile was essential, but the fragmented information made it challenging. The path forward seemed clear. Meticulously retrace Veronica and Loris's movements on the day of the tragedy. Despite the town's small size, their route along the main street was covered by numerous CCTV cameras on houses and businesses. This footage offered a new avenue of investigation, a potential window into the events leading to Loris's tragic demise. I spent a considerable amount of time analyzing the surveillance footage. Law enforcement, of course, meticulously searched for any sign of a third party, perhaps a detective, trailing the woman and her son in their black Volkswagen Polo, or perhaps another suspicious vehicle. Despite their thorough efforts, the investigators couldn't identify anything out of the ordinary or relevant to the case. However, certain inconsistencies soon became apparent. The investigators noticed they never actually saw the boy enter the school, even though his mother, Veronica, insisted she hadn't accompanied him all the way to the entrance. It became evident Veronica wasn't being truthful and that they hadn't reached the school that morning. After reviewing countless hours of recordings, they only observed the younger child exiting the car near the daycare center. The team continued to scrutinize footage from cameras across the vicinity, searching for any potential clues. They discovered that at a particular intersection where Veronica typically drove straight, she instead turned towards the church near where Loris's body was later discovered. This deviation from her usual route was puzzling, especially since she'd used a different road for years. Why would a young mother alter her routine on the very day her son was found dead? This understandably raised red flags for the Carabinieri. At this juncture, the police chose to withhold their findings to avoid alerting Veronica. However, they now considered her a person of interest. Seasoned officers decided to immediately verify her account of the morning. They requested Veronica accompany them to retrace the route she claimed to have taken on the day of Loris's death. They already knew the actual path, having meticulously pieced it together using CCTV footage. Veronica agreed, and the reconstruction began. As the police car approached the critical intersection where she had deviated from her normal route, Veronica faltered. She claimed to have followed her usual path, a blatant lie. There was now little doubt she was concealing something. Her deception made her the prime suspect, prompting a search of the Stival family home and Veronica's subsequent transport to the station for questioning. Upon realizing she was considered a potential murderer, Veronica became agitated. She vehemently denied harming her son, but the investigators remained unconvinced. The interrogation stretched for hours, with Veronica steadfastly maintaining her innocence. During the interview, she conceded to dropping her older son off 500 meters from the school, claiming she was rushed and the boy had to walk the remaining distance. She suggested someone might have attacked him en route. When questioned about her presence near the ravines on the morning of the murder, Veronica denied being in the area, claiming complete unfamiliarity with the location. This, however, was demonstrably false. Veronica's sister confirmed they had frequently played in that area as children, knowing it intimately. Furthermore, camera footage corroborated Veronica's presence there. Detectives had to pore over numerous hours of video to validate their suspicions and uncover further leads. Loris's father, Davide, was also brought into the investigation. Initially, he couldn't believe his wife could be involved in their son's death. Davide did, however, identify his wife and two children on the security footage as they left the house that morning. Instead of driving Loris to school, the footage showed her returning home with him. A figure resembling Loris was seen entering the house and wasn't observed leaving again. Subsequently, Veronica took the younger child to daycare and returned home. Uncharacteristically, she didn't park in her usual spot in front of the house, but reversed into the garage. This occurred around 9 a.m. The timeframe detectives believe the boy was killed. Loris was absent from school and at home, and when Veronica pulled into the garage, her actions were obscured from the cameras. The whole sequence of events appeared extremely suspicious. It seemed clear she was intentionally concealing something. When confronted, Veronica continued to deny any involvement. She insisted she had taken Loris to school, then driven the younger child to daycare, before returning home to attend to her usual activities. She maintained he could have been abducted just before reaching school, a scenario the police found improbable. The footage showed Veronica leaving the house again at 9:23 a.m., and just 2 minutes later, she was driving towards the old mill where Loris's body was discovered. She returned home at 9:38 a.m., now definitively alone. Given the swiftness of the events, the child must have already been deceased when she disposed of his body in a ditch. At 9:41 a.m., Veronica departed for her regular cooking class, which began at 10 a.m. Her early departure suggested an attempt to avoid suspicion. No one at the class noticed anything unusual about her demeanor. She appeared as she always did. Both her phone and car GPS data corroborated the itinerary the detectives had painstakingly reconstructed. Despite this compelling circumstantial evidence, the police still lacked sufficient proof to formally charge her. The investigation continued, and Veronica remained in custody. There were still no witnesses, physical evidence, or recordings of the mother harming her son. Just as it seemed the perpetrator was about to be exposed, a policewoman stationed outside the school came forward. She claimed to have seen Veronica drop Loris off at school on the morning of the murder. However, investigators didn't immediately accept her statement at face value. It directly contradicted the existing video evidence. Since Veronica followed the same routine every day, the officer could have easily mistaken the day. Meanwhile, Veronica remained incarcerated, vehemently proclaiming her innocence. Yet the seeds of doubt had been sown. When the Carabinieri informed Davide about Veronica's lies regarding the route she'd taken with Loris, he too began to question her behavior and cooperated with the investigation. The police recognized an opportunity to gather more evidence. Knowing Veronica likely trusted her husband, They arranged for Davide to visit her, hoping he could elicit a confession or uncover new information. Veronica, after all, was the only person with a complete picture of that fateful morning. Davide agreed, though he emphasized his reluctance to actively seek her conviction. Driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth, I agreed to a face-to-face meeting with my wife, Veronica, within the confines of the prison, sans any electronic surveillance. On January 6, 2015, a month after the horrific death of our son, Loris, I found myself sitting across from her. While my presence in the prison was technically against regulations, the authorities made an exception, hoping to facilitate a breakthrough in the case. Veronica's first words were not a greeting, but a suspicious inquiry about whether I was wearing a wire. I reassured her that I was not, demonstrating the absence of any recording devices. Truthfully, I carried no such equipment. The meeting itself was being documented by prison cameras. She maintained her innocence, reiterating the same story she had told everyone: the police, her lawyer, her family, and now me. Her narrative consistently placed her driving Loris to school that morning, with no knowledge of what transpired afterward. The detectives struggled to find concrete evidence linking her to the tragedy. Even a motive remained elusive. Those who knew her described her as a respectable woman who deeply loved her children. Of course, rumors circulated, but investigators thoroughly vetted each whisper, finding no substantiation. She truly appeared to be a devoted mother. The sole avenue of inquiry that held any weight for the investigators was the possibility of depression or emotional instability. Veronica was undeniably in a deep state of distress, exacerbated by her confinement. With the investigation at an impasse, a new strategy emerged. They orchestrated a visit to Loris's grave, a poignant opportunity for a grieving mother to say goodbye. Veronica was transported under heavy guard, a procession of 10 flashing patrol cars creating the impression of a high-risk prisoner transfer. Unknown to her, the gravesite was already equipped with listening devices. Authorities anticipated that in this private moment of grief, a confession or an apology might surface. Veronica did speak. However, her words defied all expectations. Amidst sobs and prayers, she vowed to find and punish the person responsible for her son's death. This unexpected declaration stunned the carabinieri. She was promptly returned to her cell, the hope of a graveside confession dashed. During the return trip, Veronica claimed a sudden surge of fragmented memories from the day of Loris's disappearance. She requested another meeting with me, declining to share the details with the detectives. On November 6, 2015, I returned to the prison. Like all visits, this conversation was also recorded. This time, Veronica admitted she didn't recall taking Loris to school that day. She described a disorienting mental state, a fog that obscured her recollection. She pieced together fragments of memory, recalling dropping our younger son at kindergarten and returning home, where Loris was supposed to be. She had left him behind, as he hadn't wanted to go to school. Upon returning home and not finding him, in her confused state, she assumed she had already taken him to school. The realization hit her only when she went to pick him up later that day, and he wasn't there. Law enforcement remained skeptical, yet sensed progress. This near confession, after a year-long search for answers, seemed like a significant step towards bringing the perpetrator to justice. Her memory loss narrative was interpreted as a ploy to mitigate her guilt and secure a lighter sentence. However, some recognized the genuine distress underlying her behavior. Our youngest son was too young to provide any useful information. Despite their suspicions, the carabinieri decided to indulge Veronica's apparent memory lapses, hoping to unearth more details. They arranged a visit to our home, believing the familiar surroundings might trigger further recollections. As Veronica walked through the house, frozen in time since the day of Loris's death, a disturbing transformation occurred. Upon entering Loris's room, she began to speak in his voice, reenacting a conversation they'd allegedly had that morning. Her detached demeanor convinced the detectives they were dealing with a manipulative liar, another attempt to derail the investigation. But could she, in sound mind, deceive everyone for over a year? Dozens of experts had examined her. None detected fabrication. Her lawyer maintained that genuine psychological issues were at play. Eventually, Veronica presented a new version of events, one that many still believe, although the police harbor doubts. In this account, upon returning home from dropping off her younger son, she went to wash the baby bottles. Loris remained in his room while she attended to household chores. Hearing nothing amiss, she later entered his room to find him lifeless, cable ties constricting his neck. He'd apparently been playing with the ties, fashioning them into a necklace, and accidentally tightened them. His eyes, she claimed, were wide with terror. He'd tugged at one end, believing he could loosen the ties, only tightening the fatal noose. Veronica knew how the ties worked, but unable to break them with her bare hands, she rushed to the kitchen for scissors. Upon returning, Loris was unresponsive, no longer breathing. Panic seized her. She fumbled for her phone, attempting to dial emergency services. Trembling uncontrollably, she couldn't manage to press the buttons, the numbers blurring before her eyes. Fearful of being blamed, in her distraught state, she decided to dispose of Loris's body. Later, a forensic examination revealed scratches on Loris's face and neck, consistent with attempts to tear the ties away with fingernails. Investigators theorized that in her panic, Veronica might have inadvertently tightened the ties further, exacerbating the situation and cutting off his airway. At this juncture, the police sought to clarify these details and, if possible, unlock further memories. The tragic case of Loris Stival continues to haunt those who followed it. Returning with Veronica to the ravine where Loris was discovered, investigators heard her reiterate that she had discarded the body, yet maintained her innocence regarding the actual killing. Her claim remained that she hadn't taken his life, but her inability to explain the missing underwear significantly weakened her narrative. The scenario she presented, an 8-year-old Loris placing the zip ties around his own neck and tightening them without crying out, strained credulity. Her later explanation for the missing pants, that they had slipped off and become twisted as he tumbled down the steep ravine, seemed equally improbable. The prosecution found her behavior increasingly suspicious, particularly her unusual parking of the car in the garage, a maneuver that would have facilitated loading a body discreetly. While she claimed this occurred before she knew of Loris's death, the prosecution argued it pointed towards premeditation. The defense maintained Veronica's innocence, suggesting that Loris's death was accidental, perhaps self-inflicted through careless play. They argued Veronica, panicked and in shock after discovering the tragedy, disposed of the body in a desperate attempt to conceal the accident. However, the removal of the underwear remained a critical, unanswered question. Veronica's claim of not remembering this action was interpreted by the prosecution as a deliberate attempt to stage a sexual assault, diverting the investigation. This tactic initially misled investigators, but they soon recognized the staged elements. A dramatic turn came with Veronica's accusation against Andrea Stival, Loris's paternal grandfather. She alleged an affair with him and claimed Loris witnessed them together, threatening to reveal the secret to his father. In this version, a furious Andrea Stival silenced Loris. This shocking revelation prompted a review of the evidence. CCTV footage confirmed Veronica leaving the house around 9:30 a.m. with a shadowy figure in the back of her car. However, expert analysis concluded the shape was a reflection on the car windows, not a person. No evidence supported Andrea Stival entering the house that morning. He vehemently denied the affair and the murder, dismissing Veronica's accusations as the fabrications of a disturbed woman. His alibi was corroborated, and the absence of any communication between him and Veronica further undermined her claim. Veronica's behavior throughout the investigation raised concerns about her mental state. Investigators and specialists noted her erratic actions. A detective recounted an interrogation where she spontaneously began singing, her calm demeanor frequently shifting in an incoherent mumbling and vacant stares. She seemed to drift in and out of reality, even miming smoking an imaginary cigarette. Veronica's mother confirmed a history of mental health struggles, including childhood sexual abuse and suicide attempts in her teenage years, including drinking bleach and attempting to hang herself. A past accusation of rape against a hospital nurse was unverified. Despite this history, a psychiatric evaluation determined Veronica was not insane, describing her as calculated and cold-blooded. After 4 years of delays and investigations, the court found Veronica guilty of premeditated murder and concealing a body, sentencing her to 30 years in prison. The verdict triggered another outburst. With Andrea Stival present in the courtroom, Veronica reiterated her accusations, leading to her removal. She remains incarcerated, the precise details of Loris's death possibly forever shrouded in mystery. Many investigators believe Loris's death was a premeditated act, not an accident. They suspect a dispute over school attendance, a recurring issue, escalated into a violent confrontation, leading Veronica to strangle Loris with the zip ties. The pre-purchase ties hint at premeditation. Devastated by the loss of his son, wife, and job, Loris's father continues to question Veronica's guilt, struggling to understand the motive. He maintains Veronica was a loving mother, never displaying violence towards their children. He now focuses on raising his younger son with the support of his parents. The enduring questions surrounding Loris Stival's death underscore the tragedy of this case. While the legal process has concluded, the search for the complete truth continues. If you found this video insightful, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving a like. Let's discuss this case further in the comments section. I also recommend checking out these other videos. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.